I'm so excited to welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast, Charlotte Blair. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this and love connecting with people. And you and I have been sort of virtually connected for a while. So super excited to talk to you in person.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. And as we hopped on video today, it's like, oh, wow, we're actually meeting in person, like the new equivalent. I've seen your name around. You're absolutely right. Like I can tell that you love connecting with people. I see you everywhere. You're super responsive. You're very helpful. So thanks for bringing that energy to my online life. Can you share with listeners a bit about yourself, your story, your career, where you are now?
Sure, no problem. Well, literally where I am now, I'm in Kyneton in Victoria. In a rural place. I originally, pretty much my whole career has actually been in sales. So I used to work for Canon, selling photocopiers. Then I spent 12 years working for Verizon, the big kind of global, a lot of people in the US would have heard of Verizon because they're a big global telco there, less familiar here in Australia maybe. But I was working with them in the UK, and this is how I kind of got into the strengths piece and the facilitation part, because I was working with them and I had the opportunity to discover my Clifton Strengths with a guy called Brian Bailey, who was a kind of leadership consultant at the time. And I remember getting my strengths and thinking, yeah, that sounds like me. That's great. And it wasn't actually until I moved with Verizon to Australia and I did the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits course. And it talked very much about what your mission and purpose in life was. And I kind of went, is my mission and purpose in life really to be a great IT salesperson? And I, got you thinking about the things that you really love doing. And for me, it was, connecting with others, learning from others, helping others. And I remember saying to Brian at the time, I said, look, I really think I want to kind of change my career. I'd love to do what you do. How do I get to do what you do? And he was, well, you need to go and get some coaching, accreditations, maybe some facilitation accreditations or training. And I really recommend that you dig out your strengths and you think about how you might use your strengths to pivot your career. So Verizon were great. At the time, they had this thing where every employee got $7,000 a year to spend on training. And that training could be whatever you liked as long as it led to your career development, as long as it was career relevant. So I couldn't go and do basket weaving or mechanics or something. So I went away and got my ICF coaching accreditation. I also, here in Victoria, there's a company called GroupWorks. I think I remember they shared one of your podcasts once. So they did an advanced diploma in facilitation. And that was a year-long course. So I took that. And then I also used the tuition assistance allowance to become a Gallup-accredited coach. And the more I found out about strengths, the more I found out about coaching, the more I found out about facilitation, the more I wanted to do it. And I'm number one activator. And I remember Brian saying to me, it's going to take you a little while, don't try and run before you can walk, and tell an activator that. And, that's, so I wanted to change my career within Verizon. I'd only just moved to Australia, so it wasn't actually that there was an opportunity in like Philippines, but that was not going to kind of happen for me. So at that point, it's funny how networks go. So I remember, I knew Claire de Carteret from Gallup. I've met her, I was talking to her, I remember reaching out and saying, hey, I'm thinking of pivoting my career into this area of facilitation and coaching. Do you know of anybody that has anything? She said, oh, my husband works at Fuel. And this is this kind of connection back to Marcus Crowe. So, I went to Fuel for a year and worked at Fuel, and the role was kind of supposed to be part facilitation, part sales, but really it ended up still being sales. And I kind of got a little bit frustrated with how long it was taking. Again, this activating, wanting to kind of run into it. But Fuel gave me great grounding and understanding, more of the learning and development world, more of that facilitation world. So after 12 months, I was like, no, I really want to do something with strengths. And that was the point where we set up our own business. There were 3 of us that were on the Gallup accreditation program at the time. We would meet up for coffees. And we set up a partnership. So, Strengths Partners was born from there. Now, pretty much now, Carmen, one of the business partner, sorry, she left for health reasons. The other one then got tied up in a contract. So it ended up being me on my own. And I never intended to go out on my own, but it's probably been the best thing that I ever did. Just, jumping ship and setting something up and leveraging my network and following my passion. So sounded like a long story then, didn't it? But yeah, that's how I kind of made the shift from IT sales to doing what I do now.
I love that story. I think if anyone, I did chat to Marcus Crowe about this in the previous episode, like what are the steps if you want to pivot from being an internal person that loves this to running your own show? And I think you just picked up so many amazing points there, like the power of the network, the power of being an activator and just taking action on things, using where you were, so planting in your company, taking advantage of the opportunities that were available there. Wow, it's really cool that you had an annual budget of $7,000. That probably wouldn't cover accreditation right now, but back a few years ago, it definitely would. That's
back in the day.
I didn't want to say that actually. Now, let's talk more about your ability to build networks. I don't know if you remember this, Charlotte, and I was actually trying to find the Strengths app from last year's summit in Omaha. I remember that you messaged me it was the last day, and you're like, "Hey, Leanne, great to see you from Australia. And we're all here at the closing ceremony. Just look for the Aussie flags." And I don't know if I got it in time. The story was on that day, I was severely hungover, just to be frank with all listeners. I had a big night in Omaha, playing pool and yeah. And then I just ended up, I missed a few sessions. I saw Murray, he was out, we just had a chat. And then, yeah, I kind of, I was there, but wasn't really on top of things. I'm so bummed I missed you. Let's talk about strengths. So activator is quite funny, and just, sorry, I'm still going, but I've got activator in my top 5 as well. And we were setting up this interview with Charlotte. It was like the easiest thing to set up. It was one link. She booked in a couple of days, and now we're talking. It's the power of a couple of activators getting together. So let's talk about then your experience with strengths and how that's played out in terms of your facilitation work and how you deliver. Where do you see, first of all, can you share what your 5 strengths are? And then how you use that in your workshops?
Sure. Happy to share that. One thing I'd say is I really struggle to only share my 5. So I always say my dominant talents are actually my top 12. But what I'm going to do is I'll give you the context in my top 10. And sometimes the other 2 kind of come into play. So if I think about explaining them in the context of my facilitation and how I work, activator is very much getting things started. So I'm a bit of a fast starter. I can sometimes be a bit impatient, but I love getting groups started. I then have woo. So, I use my combination of woo, positivity, and communication. They're also my top 10, and I tend not to worry about what order they're in because they're all just tools that I use in my toolkit. So those 3 trifecta really bring the passion and energy and fun to facilitation where it's needed. My arranger very much can pivot with the needs of the group, and I might have an agenda, but as we know, we've got to go with the needs of the group, and sometimes that kind of goes out the window, and that's fine. I'm very comfortable with that. I also have command. Command for me means kind of a bit of courage. So it's more the courage. So again, that you asked me the question in some things that you sent me about, what led to that shift or what gave me the courage to the shift. To me, it was pretty easy. I also have self-assurance, so that was easy to do. But courage in the terms of facilitation, command in the terms of facilitation is very much leading the group where I need to, challenging sometimes, having a bit of a poke around, a gentle poke around. So, but the woo and the command go together and look like woo-mander. So it's,
I love that.
Yeah, woo can soften, woo and positivity can soften the command. So it, looks different to straight command on its own. My individualization, I also have individualization, means that I very much tailor to the needs of the group. I want to ask great questions so that I really understand what the outcomes are, so that, they get exactly what they want. And then, my maximizer is very much taking good to great. So how do I really help those people discover their strengths or, become great leaders or coaches? And then I also have responsibility in there. So I have the responsibility to the group to make sure that we meet the outcomes. And then I'm also high significance. And that for me means that I want to do something that makes a difference. And hence that, do I want to be a great IT salesperson? No, I want to do something that makes a difference to others in their lives, which is why I really love coaching other coaches. So I have part of my business is coaching other coaches, especially, new, maybe people that have just become accredited. How do I start my own business? And then obviously the, groups. I love working with groups and managers and teams. How do we help them maximize the potential in the team to reach better outcomes? So they're my kind of strengths, maybe not listed by number, but how they kind of play out for me as either a facilitator or, sort of a coach.
Lovely. And I like how you've brought in the strengths to the context of facilitation and brought out those dominant ones. Yeah, I've got significance and maximizer as well. Maximizer, I was talking to Joanna Wiesinger in Texas. She's got maximizer too. And we were just talking, just kind of laughing about up until the moment of a workshop, we'll just continue like updating slides and just constantly iterating things up until the moment we have to deliver. And it's great, but it can be like a really overused strength sometimes in the context of a workshop. And for those listening in, if you don't know what we're talking about, you're like, what's woo, what's command, like what are they going on about? We're talking about the Gallup Clifton Strengths Finder tool, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And Charlotte is, in terms of Australia, New Zealand, and you've got really great networks across the global community of strengths coaches. Reach out to Charlotte. She definitely knows what she's talking about. I'd love to know more about I just remember when I got my own strengths report, done a lot of accredited tools, and I got that one. I was like, this one is like reading my mind. It's my favorite tool. I talk about it all the time.
Same for me. Can I just add to that and how the maximizer plays out for me? I think it's less about how do I, and I hear that a lot from people, you're polishing the pearl. For me, it's like that. I like to be a subject matter expert, which is why I really love strengths. Like I'm Herman Brain accredited as well, but I love strengths so much. So I really try and use that to kind of, focus in. So when we picked up on that maximizer piece, it's like, I really want to be that subject matter expert on strengths, and how do I help, other people discover and use them.
Yeah, it's awesome, because I hear, in terms of hearing your strengths replayed back to me, it's like, that's from me not even knowing you and just seeing you online, I totally get that sense. So yeah, you're being authentic. Well done. Let's talk about, very quick shift, but you got a background in sales, and I often find you also mentioned that you help coaches start their business. And I love this podcast. We focus on facilitation as a skill, but we also focus on what does it take to build a business. And sales, it seems to be like a word that people shy away from, myself included. I love marketing. I love like that attraction marketing, that conversion to sales piece. I can get a little bit scared. So what is, like, when you work with coaches that have got their accreditation, they now want to get clients, like what kind of advice or tips do you offer them?
Yeah, that's the big thing that I see the most, probably coaching others. That, they love the coaching, they love the facilitation piece, but find the sales piece a little bit icky. Now, probably, yes, having a sales background, it comes a little bit more naturally to me, but it's really helping them think about how might they use their strengths to sell. So, yes, we have the strengths-based selling book, but it's very personalized. So even when we think about networking, some people, I love networking. I would say to people, if I could go to a networking event every day, I would be in my element. And people would go, I'd rather stick needles in my eyes than do that, which is why I travel thousands of miles every year to attend the summit, and why I want to meet everybody there. And I'm like, oh my God, Leanne's an Aussie and I haven't met her yet. How is this possible? So, it's thinking about how do you use your strengths to build your network. So whether you be a relator, whether you be a learner, whether you prefer that, when I say relator, again, these terms, it's, do I prefer a one-on-one relationship in a small group, or do I love big networks. So helping people think about how do you tap into your strengths to build the network that you might need. I was talking to a coach the other day, 21 years she'd spent at Accenture, and then was wanting to sort of, break out. It's right. How do you leverage the network that you already have? Reach out to those people. If you'd rather have a coffee, if you do need to go to a networking event, think about which strengths you might be able to use to do that. So I think the key thing is leveraging your network, thinking about, which tools you might use, as in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. The other key thing I think that a lot of people shy away from is asking for referrals. Yeah. And again, if you've done a piece of work and they come up to you afterwards and say, that's great, having the courage, using whichever talent theme, again, strengths that is going to help you do that, to say, hey, if you thought it was great, would you mind giving me a testimonial on my website? Is there somebody else in the organization that you could connect me with? I'd really love to meet the finance director. How might you be able to connect me there? And I think it's just sort of getting a little bit bolder. Even coaches that are maybe behind the harmony theme that go, oh, I don't know that I'm comfortable doing that. It's okay, right? Well, one of the benefits to doing that, how might you, think about doing that? So I think, the key for me is leveraging that network, asking for referrals, and getting really clear on the outcomes as well. It's another thing I see a lot of people, you're part of the Facebook community groups, go, hey, what activity could we do here? Well, less about activity, think about what are the outcomes that you want. So same when you're in a client meeting, being really clear about asking those great open questions and understanding, what the key outcome is. That's how we build a much deeper trusted relationship that then leads on to being comfortable asking for those referrals. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I often stack a lot of my efforts in like the prep work and the delivery. And you're right, it's like that final piece of when it's all done, you've got the great feedback. That's a really important marketing step, as you mentioned, to then like sort of close that loop and ask for that referral. It should be, for me, I guess if it was part of like I'd had this template and it was just a matter of like pasting it, clicking send, or, just having a framework of doing it, I'm sure I'll do it a lot better. It's funny about your network. A lot of people, because I have this podcast, I'm pretty outgoing, but woo for me is like right at the bottom. Like if I'm on a plane, I really don't want to chat to the person next to me. I just pop my headphones in, and it's funny the perception and how you actually feel. But I'd also, like same as you, Charlotte, love building my network, but just in a different way than speaking to random strangers.
Yeah, and I think it's about being intentional. That's the key thing that, when we discover our strengths, we go, yeah, that's great. They're inside my mind, like you said. How do they know this? And most people get the report and go, yeah, these are my strengths. This sounds like me. But we have to be so much more intentional about using them. So, Gallup have this term that you're possibly familiar with of naming, claiming, and aiming. And a lot of people do Jim refers to it, Jim Collison on his podcast refers to it. We do a lot of, naming, and naming, not naming, aiming, actually aiming it. So we have to be really intentional about how can I use my strengths to help me build a network? What am I actually going to do about it? Yeah, wooing and, talking to strangers and talking to anybody that will talk to me comes very naturally. But how do I be intentional about looking at my network and going, oh, yeah, look, I know Leanne, she's connected with Jim. Hey, Leanne, can you connect me with Jim? So, and that's about using the system 2 part of our brain as opposed to the system 1 part of our brain that is, does it just automatically. Whereas if we're using system 2, we're being really intentional and focused and planned about it.
Oh, yeah. I love that you mentioned those 2 systems. Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. Awesome book. If you haven't read it, it is a tough book to read though. If you have problems sleeping, it's one to read. But it's a really great, really interesting case studies, fascinating data. It's a hard read. But the 2 systems are really worth highlighting. So on the naming, aiming, and claiming, you're right. And in workshops, I find, and we'll talk about workshops specifically, not coaching, you have a group together, they're getting their strengths reports, they're all really excited, or, trying to find out how this is related to them and how they see it play out. The tough part of facilitation, the question that often again is cropped up on the community and just everyone that asks me questions is, well, how do you bottle that energy up in that workshop? And how do you enable people to take action when the workshop is over? And people, I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on that. How do you sort of enable people to use their strengths after, Charlotte, you've left? It's a tough one.
Sure. I'm going to just turn my video off a second, Leanne, because I think it's telling the internet that it's struggling. So while I answer that, I'm just going to turn my video off one second.
No problems.
So for me, I think the key thing that I do, and this is probably where the command comes in a little bit as well, and the responsibility of at the end, having them commit to some sort of action, and then have them think about which of their strengths are going to help them stay committed and take that action. So normally I get to the end, what's the one action that you're going to take as a result? Then I try and get them to buddy up with somebody and commit to each other. What time are we going to meet to talk about how we've gone with this action that we're going to take? So that's the first thing that I do. The second thing I think is the manager is really critical to this, and hence, Gallup wrote their book, It's the Manager. So the manager has a responsibility to play. Normally they're engaged in the design of the workshop, or it might be, say, HR. So making sure that the manager follows up with that person, understands what they've learned, understand what action that they're going to take is the thing. And then hence why managers need to be great coaches to sort of coach them through that process of whatever action they're going to take. So that's the second one. So the first one, buddy up, commit to action using your strengths. Second one, the manager. The third one that I love, and this is funny how the kind of connection comes back in as well. I remember when you were talking with Marcus Crowe, he mentioned that, they originally founded Oxygen Learning with, 2 other partners. One of the other partners was a guy called Ben Larkey from Learning Republic. And I've been doing some work with him recently. And he developed this most amazing platform. It's around issues-based learning, and it's a sort of digital learning environment. Imagine something like iTunes. Say I don't want to have the whole album, I only want a playlist. So people create their own playlists around their issues. So say they've attended a workshop and it's actually about becoming a better coach. And there's a number of tools that they might use to become a better coach. That might be learning the GROW model. It might be learning the SBI feedback model. It might be, the iceberg above the line. We see above the line, we see the behavior, what's going on below the line. It's mindset, it's skill, it's will. So they might walk away with all these different tools and frameworks, but then as soon as they walk away, they might forget them. So he has this amazing platform that enables people to go in, maybe watch a video on one of those tools, and then create their own playlist. So, I need to give Jim some feedback on something. Am I just going to use SBI? No, probably not. I need to understand, what's causing this behavior. Is it skill? Is it will? Is it me? Is it them? Is there a bias coming in from my strengths, for instance? I might then give feedback, and then I might need to go on and coach. So we encourage people to use these playlists and then share those playlists with each other and going, this is something that I found worked for me. And somebody else goes, I found this works for me. So that's another thing that we have found has made a massive difference in terms of when you attend the workshop, how are you going to get a return on investment and, leverage the tools that you know. And that's been a bit of a game changer for me, actually, Leanne.
I can totally see that being a game changer. It's very X factor. What I like about it as well is the autonomy. It's like it's like a choose your own adventure for the participant. And there's nothing worse than when, and probably goes back to school when like, okay, homework is this, and you just get given stuff, right? It's not your opt-in. I just love that you're now giving it to participants as an opt-in. That is such a cool strategy. Thank you for sharing that with our listeners. So these workshops that you're running, like all of us, we're moving virtually. How are you going with that? Like how has your process been of transitioning your face-to-face workshops and the joy of, you love it, you being around people, to now us being isolated and running these things? What have you learnt? How have you approached it? Have you used your strengths to help you transition through this pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think at first, probably like everybody, when things first happened, any face-to-face workshop that I had all got put on hold. None of them have actually been cancelled. Some of them are still on hold. Maybe there's a big bank that we deal with and that's kind of on hold at the moment. Some of them transition pretty quickly to virtual. I mean, it's interesting. Certainly the strengths work that I do used to be a whole day workshop. Now you can't have people sitting down in front of a PC for a whole day. So we've modularized it and it's become 2-hour segments. What I have seen a shift, and I think a shift for the better, is that commitment to more pre-work and commitment more to post-work. So, you might have people in the context of discovering their strengths. Yes, making sure that they've taken the assessment, read the report, but they're, doing the e-learning module. They maybe come prepared with an image that best represents one of their strengths. So there's a certain amount of pre-work that goes to that. Yes, I'm very much a high energy, standing up in the room. I never stand still. I walk about all over the place. I rarely ever use slides. I'm always using kind of, flip charts, and there's a lot of group participation. So then there was a bit of rethink about, gosh, how do we do that in the context of using breakout rooms, for instance? And one of the shifts I noticed there for me was really enjoying helping some other coaches or people shift that. I think as you do, I remember at the beginning, you were like, oh, okay, here's what Zoom looks like. Here's what breakout rooms look like. So I've really enjoyed helping other people do that. We've done some like flash mob facilitation as well, where it's, hey, let's learn from each other of the different activities that you might use as an energizer. Then I kind of, Leanne, in the middle of all this, I managed to get bucked off my horse. I had a bit of a major accident, broke all my ribs, punctured my lungs. So there was a period of time where I kind of wasn't doing any work, and then that's kind of, started to pick back up again. And luckily I love what I do. So I was desperate to, get back out there. So yeah, that kind of shift has been interesting. I'm seeing more green shoots of growth coming back in, certainly in certain sectors like technology and pharma. And I think it's about helping, for me, it's really much about helping my clients sustain what they've learned, even if they don't have budgets anymore. How can I add value to them and give them some of the resources? So those organizations that have become strengths-based with me in the past, how do I give them tips and hints to think about how do you use your strengths in times of crisis or volatility? Here's some worksheets and resources. Here's some podcasts you might want to look to. Gallup produced thousands and thousands of hours worth of amazing, podcasts and webinars and resources. So I try and use my individualization to pick the right one. So even if it's not a workshop with me, it's a how do I spend time helping them, again, get their return on investment and leverage their strengths in times of challenge.
Yeah, it's been a very challenging year. And it's funny, you mentioned that you had your accident and you might have been offline for a while. I definitely didn't notice that from you. This might be a left field question, but you're so active. Like you're very active, and you've got events running. You're constantly running like awesome ideas, like the flash mob, brilliant. Like, how do you sustain that? Because I look at that in admiration and go, like, how are you doing all of this? Like, how are you so responsive? How are you building? You're everywhere. It's amazing.
I could say the same back. I feel like you're very responsive. I think if you love what you do, then it doesn't feel like work. So, I get up in the morning and I check Facebook quickly and see what's going on. And then I, plan my day and work out what I need to do. And then, so I think, very much the significance drives me, as in the talent theme of significance of, wanting to make a difference, really drives me to help others. I was really intentional. I don't think you were there, because I remember asking the question. So last year at the summit, Jim and Micah did their live call to coach, where they were on stage and they just kind of pulled me up impromptu, and I had no idea that they were going to do that, but do that to a woo communication positivity, and significance, and they're in their element. But the key for me is I said that I wanted to be more intentional about helping other coaches, because I feel that if I can help other coaches, I'm helping more people discover their strengths, around the world, as opposed to, maybe just in Australia. So I think that's what drives me to do that. And as you'll see, some of the sessions we do are free and some of them are chargeable. And so it's that balance in between corporate clients, team workshops, one-on-one manager coaching, or, events to help coaches and facilitators pick up new tips, hints, skills, ideas, networks. I love my woo and arranger loves connecting people. So, and seeing those connections. So I'm like, oh, you have Marcus? Oh my gosh, I know Marcus.
Yeah, he was
an amazing. Yeah, he was an amazing advocate for when I first started. So, and again, back to that network piece. So,
it's all about the network, really. I mean, just with business, building careers, I think that's probably the best. I mean, looking back, younger, starting my career, if I had to start again, it would just be like channeling the network, building it, and like you said, being more intentional. I was in a meeting the other week, and a guy, he was just quoting Oprah's book. I don't know which one, but he's saying, look, because there's just so many meetings. So he's like, look, before you even set a meeting, can you please be intentional and like let us know what the intention is behind the meeting? I thought that was really good. And it's like, if you could just bring that practice into, intentional about how you're going to go about your day, intentional about the clients you're going to serve, I think that's really important. And certainly coming out of my role was kind of like, I love doing a lot of different things like leadership, this podcast, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, what is the intention? Like, what do I actually want to be when I grow up? And I sort of oscillate between different things. In terms of intentions, what are some good ways of discovering? This is a big question. Like, what's a good way of discovering or clarifying what our intentions should be?
Our intentions as coaches or facilitators, or
or even we'll go through for career intentions for your career.
I think intentions for your career is very much understanding what your passion and purpose is. So I guess something I might fall back there onto would be Simon Sinek's Know Your Why. I think that's a key one. Why do you do what you do? And that links back to the sales piece as well. Again, if you know your why, then it becomes a little bit, the how becomes easier. And then if you know your strengths, then the how becomes even easier. I think that's the first bit. If being more intentional as a facilitator in the room, then I think it's very much about, again, coming back to the participants, understanding what the outcomes are. I like to make sure that I'm checking in on a regular basis, because activator, I've got a lot of what we call fast themes. So sometimes I feel like I go too fast. So I'm very intentional about checking in with the people. So even things like, at the beginning, we might set up group expectations. Even if the manager has said to me, hey, the outcomes, I want people to discover their strengths, get to know each other a little bit more, have better self-awareness, awareness of others, and use them to collaborate. That might be the intention. Then I check in with the participants and go, okay, what do you want to make sure that you get out of this session? What does good look like? What does bad look like? And then we check in and say, hey, how are we going for time? Too fast, too slow? Is it meeting your objectives? So I think intentional as a facilitator about asking the questions and really making sure that we are getting the wisdom in the room.
I'm so glad that you got activator as well, because I'm the same as you, Charlotte. Like I just love, because I guess I think about, it's a bias I have. It's, as a participant, I just don't like slow moving workshops, like where it's like deep reflection, and some people geek out on that. Certainly not myself. So then when I'm the facilitator, I bring that bias in with me, but I think it's really important, like you said, to check in and just to make sure that the intention is shared by that group. Something I've got to consider more about. Do you have a favorite activity or energizer that you lead? It doesn't matter if it's face-to-face or virtual, something that you kind of, if you want to ramp up the energy a little bit more, that you rely on, or that you use to, like you said, just connect people in your workshop.
Yeah. And again, I think it's, I use this term horses for courses, and I learned with a group of Americans recently that only translates well in England or Australia, apparently. So, and it depends on the group. Like you, and I'm often high energy, and sometimes I've got a group that they don't want that energy. So I really have learned to actually, adjust it a little bit and go, okay, this is a more reflective group, and they want those deep connections. So in terms of energizers, I love the one, you might have seen it, or you might use it yourself, around the clapping. So they have to kind of, they have to count to 3 first. So it'd be alternately, it'd be 1, you go 2, I go 3, and then we keep doing this. So 1, 2, 3 alternately. And then we replace, 2 with a clap. And then 3 might be a hop or a shimmy. So I think that's a fairly kind of common one. I like that for energy, but not everybody else likes that. I think for me, in terms of my favorite, icebreaker, is often when people are sharing something quite personal. So some ones there that I love are, excuse me, what's your favorite possession, or what's your most treasured possession? And it can't be a person. So they can't say, my wife or my child or something. You get some amazing stories that come out of that about, a watch that their father left them, or an oar that their mother, has, or something like that. Another one that I love that is more deeper connection than energy. Energy would be, but it actually can sometimes lead to energy because it can be quite funny. If you were to write a book about your life, what would the title be? That's often quite a funny one. I like using that one. That's how we might often sort of start something off. And then I think in terms of activity, that's my favorite activity around strengths. You might have heard of it, is the one that we call the best of us. So you have 4 questions. You get the best of me when. You get the worst of me when. This is what I need from you, and this is what you can count on me for. As a group, when we look at answering those questions and sharing them and really debriefing them deeply, then that's probably one of my favorite activities. It's not an energizer, but it's my favorite activity that really you get some gold from people. And when we're talking about teams collaborating and learning from each other, that's the most powerful one I've come across.
Yeah, I do like that even as an individual reflection. It's really great. And it's funny how, gosh, I don't remember the last time I did that activity, probably over a year ago. I wonder what would change now based on what's happened this year and and obviously keep learning about ourselves. So what's the new insight? Charlotte, is there anything else you'd like? Oh, sorry, did you want to add to that? Or
I was going to add to that that it's a good activity to actually do on a regular basis and put a goal in the middle. So if our goal is how do you get the best of me during virtual learning, or how do you get the best of me during remote working? How do you get the best of me on this particular project team rolling out SAP system, for instance? So if you think about using that activity frequently in the context of whatever their goal or outcome is, as opposed to just, once when we're a team coming together, and then making sure that we check in on it on a regular basis. And it's why the manager's critical of going, hey, Leanne, we get the best of you when, I heard you said we get the best of you when X, Y, Z. How are we going with that? Are we getting the best of you? Are we honoring, what you need from me, for instance? So it's a good one to repeat and get the team to do themselves when you're not there.
Yeah, it's probably like, it's funny how so Michael Bungay Senior's book, The Coaching Habit, he's got these 7 key questions. These 4 questions could also, like you said, they could apply to different contexts. You can bring them in. You've pretty much just, Charlotte, just in that in the answer to those questions about energizers and icebreakers, you've just designed a 1-hour workshop for us, not longer. So thank you so much. And it is that simple, like some really key questions, a bit of energy lift and something to share that's personal. I think that's just covered like a lot of the key elements of a great workshop. Is there anything else you'd like to share with listeners? If they want to accelerate their facilitation skills, what would you suggest for them? Or just actually, that's a really general question. Yeah, just anything else you'd like to share with listeners that we haven't covered yet?
Anything else I'd like to? Oh, there's I could talk all day. I think if you have the opportunity to learn from others, I recommend that you do that. What I have seen, especially during COVID, the most powerful bit is when you get a group of facilitators or a group of coaches together and they share different ideas and then build upon other ideas. So if you are a coach or a facilitator out there and you're going, oh, like I'm really struggling either with business development, or I'm really struggling to think about how I could shift this session, either yourself drive to get other people together, or go have a look on some of the communities that are out there and see what might be going on, or follow me on Facebook or follow me on LinkedIn, because I always kind of post them there as well. That's what we often do, get groups together and go, hey, what's your favorite activity? Or we did it at the beginning of COVID of going, I don't know if this is going to translate virtually. One person that did the rock, paper, scissors, which is great in a big group, but did it translate virtually? So it gave them the opportunity to test it out, to go yes, no, and then other coaches might say, oh yeah, but I would change that. So comes back to leverage your network, get people together, share ideas. I think that's the key thing, really, of learning during this. Like yesterday, you're talking about Murray. Yesterday, there was a group of us. We presented at the summit last year, and we got together. So we had, Lisa Cummings, Becky Hammond, Murray Guest, Doug Bacon, Tyann, and Leah. They're all in the US, and we came back together, and it was lovely just to reconnect, but also share some of the challenges that we've been having, some ideas, and then we said, hey, look, let's not leave it a year. Let's make sure that we get together on a monthly basis and share and check in and get ideas from each other.
Yeah. And it's interesting in those forums where you get people jumping online together. It attracts the right type of person who is very generous with their ideas and won't hold back. Like everyone sees it. A lot of coaches and facilitators just see it as an opportunity for all of us to grow. What's that quote? The rising tide lifts all boats. So it's definitely worthwhile and great to hear that you're reconnecting and then setting a cadence on this as well. Charlotte, I'm so grateful. Finally got to meet you and catch up and pick your brain about stuff that you do virtually and strengths. And I really loved hearing about how you contextualize it for career, for even for showing up, for building business. I love that. That's something that I've got to do more of, is claiming it and aiming it. So thank you for that. If our listeners would love to reach out, connect with you, where should we send them?
Being high woo, I love connecting with people. Best place to connect with me would probably be on LinkedIn. I have 2 Facebook profiles. One is my personal profile that I post lots of pictures of my dogs and horses and dinner and things like that. So probably not that one. There's another one that has the same image that I have on LinkedIn, that I think is the image I sent you to share. So if people find that on Facebook, then they can connect with me there. It's very much kind of coach's Facebook page, and I share a lot of the workshops that we might be doing, or the free come along and join a flash mob and pick up tips and hints. That's the best place. Or my email address, which I'm sure you'll share there, just charlotte@thestrengthspartners.com. They're probably the best places to find me. But I love connecting with anybody and everybody and helping, share my network with others as well.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, don't be shy. That is an open invitation to connect with Charlotte. She said it here. Charlotte, it's been great to connect with you. Thank you so much for sharing everything on the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Leanne, for having me. And, I love that it did happen really quickly. And then, yeah, we kind of pivoted off in different directions. And it's awesome to talk to a fellow activator that shares the same sort of passion and energy as I do. So thank you. And thank you for everything that you do for the community as well. It's amazing that you've started this podcast and, your Facebook page of how you share so much with others. So, thank you for being part of that community as well.
Well, thank you for being part of it and adding all the energy. Thanks, Charlotte.
All right. See you soon.